Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Doug Flynn Show. And we want to thank you all for listening. You've been so good and so faithful, and we've heard some really kind things from you. So we like hearing those. But like I said, we may ruffle a few feathers every now and then along the way. And if we do that, that's okay. We just want to talk about it. And we want to go and get your opinion, my opinion, and then basically come and see what the Bible says about it, which is the absolute truth. And that's kind of what the basis of the show is. It's Christmas time, one of my most favorite times of year. One, I know my wife's going to probably buy me something kind of nice. We've decorated the house. I get a little time off work. The fish is pretty good in the wintertime. And of course, the baby Jesus was born, which is the most important thing. And so today we're going to talk about maybe a little bit of everything with my special guest. This is our Christmas show. This is a show where it's going to just have two friends talking about what God has done in their lives, as well as a few things. But I have to pre-warn you, my guest today is he's an author, he's a comic, he's a writer, he's a TV host. And, you know, his career struggled a little bit. So I thought today we'd bring him on the show, maybe give a little boost to his career. So please welcome my baseball buddy, the big fan of the Georgia Bulldogs, Atlanta Braves fan, and my friend, Mr. Jeff Foxworthy, and my brother. Merry Christmas. How you doing?
Merry Christmas, 23. You have to explain to everybody, when we call each other, we don't address each other by our names. I call you 23, and you call me 42. And
I remember the day we discussed that, because you were asking why you all call each other by numbers, and you said, I want a number.
Yeah.
And it took a little flack, but we finally came up with one, right? Tell people why you're 42.
Once you saw my skills in baseball fantasy camp, you realized I was an athlete and I deserved a number.
Yeah. Am I correct in saying you were number one draft choice that year?
I was number one draft choice.
Number one draft.
My brother, but I wasn't far behind.
So it's Christmas time, bud. I know you're working a lot, and you're taking a few trips. So you're going to be able to spend a little time with your lovely wife, Greg, and your grandbaby now.
I am. I got my last two shows of the year. They always hire me in Vegas in December because that's when they have National Finals Rodeo, and they go, well, we got a lot of people with blue jeans and boots that spit in cups, so let's hire Foxworthy this weekend. Those are his people. And I don't know if you've ever been to Vegas this time of year, but to me, really nothing says happy birthday, Jesus, like watching Granny on a rascal scooter smoke a cigarette and play 3 slots simultaneously. I mean, I think that's in Luke where that is discussed. That is the true meaning of Christmas there.
I think I might have read that in First Esophagus somewhere, I believe.
First Esophagus.
Yeah, it was around
there. The cable guy always goes, I believe that was second parentheses where I read.
Well, you and I have known each other a while. We actually met at a baseball fantasy camp for the Atlanta Braves, and I'll never forget, you and Jay were standing out in the lobby, and my wife and I were going to go eat, and we saw you. We sort of introduced ourselves a little bit and said, come on, go with us. And we had another guy that we were meeting down there that kind of surprised you a little bit.
It did. We walk into dinner, and there's your buddy Pete Rose, which, if you'll remember, we were like in a sports bar. So they had like 40 different kinds of games on the TVs all around the place. And you'd be talking to Pete, and he's like, so how'd you get into comedy? Come on, no. You know, I don't know what kind of bets he had on what game, but he was easily distracted that evening. But it was as somebody that grew up as a huge baseball fan, that was, to meet Doug Flynn and Pete Rose in the same day was a big deal.
You know, that reminds me of something. Before we get into kind of a little more serious stuff, did you see a couple of more guys went into the Hall of Fame this past week?
I did. Well, I looked at the list and your name wasn't on it, and I deleted it.
Richie Allen and Dave Parker went in, which
Dave Parker goes in and Doug Flynn's not in.
I
See,
know. I know.
that destroys all the legitimacy of the Hall of Fame.
See,
Do you, Dave Parker? I used to think if I was a pitcher, I would have been scared to death to have stood in front. Dave Parker took a cut now.
big 6'6", about
Oh,
240.
Richie
And
Allen was a big guy too back in his time,
oh yeah. He
but
swung a
Parker,
40-ounce bat, Jeff. Can you imagine that?
oh my
40
word.
ounces. And both
That's
of
like
them
a
when
Babe
he
Ruth bat. That's
it's what
crazy. Oh my word.
well, I knew it probably upset you because you told me years ago that when I go in, you will present me in front of all the
I
people into
will.
the Hall of Fame. And I'm starting to get a little worried now. But,
Oh,
people say, where were your qualifications? Well, just think if I was a 300 hitter. Now, let me ask you this question. What is the biggest gripe from baseball people about the game of baseball?
now
Yeah,
uh,
it has been for a while.
that fundamentals, loyalty, willing to give yourself
Length
up,
of the game.
length of the games. Yeah,
See, that's where I concentrated on it, knowing that if I were to keep getting hits,
the game would just
that
keep going.
it would just keep going on. So, for the sake of the game, me and a lot of my friends decided we would in a Christian way make the out so that the game
The,
wouldn't go as long.
the two hopper to second base on the first pitch, and
Yeah,
yeah, and then
yeah,
you could get back in the dugout, get your glove all ready to go back out and
yeah.
shine some defense. Right.
See, doesn't that make sense?
Total sense to me. And but
Well,
the Hall doesn't look at that kind of thing, you know.
I know. The hall's all about numbers and all of that stuff.
And
I've never been about that.
and you never brag about it, but I think you had 7 dingers, didn't you?
Well, I don't want to brag. It's only 6 of them went out of the ballpark though.
So
Oh man, I tell you, all right, I got some stuff I want to talk to you. Everywhere you go now, everybody knows who you are, so you really don't need an introduction. And there was a time I know when you started off in your comedy where uh, you just from working for IBM. When did the light go on that says, Jeff, I've given you a gift, and I always felt like my baseball, what there was, and everything is all a gift from God. That it said, all right, it's time for you maybe to start sharing your faith with other people. Did that light kind of go on?
um when it really went on, throughout my career, I've always done a lot of stuff with kids with cancer. But Greg, my wife's name is Greg, she and I became the head fundraisers for the Duke Children's Hospital.
Mm-hmm.
And every time we'd go to the hospital, they'd say, all right, we're going to go visit this kid and this kid and this kid. I said, no, we're going to go visit every kid because I ain't walking past somebody's room and make them feel like they're not as important as that other kid. So it was always a big process. It'd take like 6 hours to go visit them all. But as I would start walking into rooms, people having no idea you were going to show up, and I would see one of my books or one of my DVDs
Mm-hmm.
or one of my CDs in that room, and they didn't know I was coming, and it just struck me, and that the gift that I had, I don't, everybody everybody listening to this, watching this is going through a struggle, and I mean, it might be financial, might be physical, might be emotional, but everybody's going through something, which is why I've always been my whole life, be kind to people because you don't know their story. You don't know
Mm-hmm.
what they're dealing with. Um, and I'm not naive enough to think comedy makes people's struggle go away, but I do think that it's kind of like the release valve that keeps the boiler from exploding. It's like being able to put your rock down for a minute and shake your arms out and rest, and then you feel better and you go pick it back up. And so I started viewing it not only as something that I love to do, but I'm like, there's value in this. There's value in laughter, in being that release valve for people to help them deal with whatever that they were going through. And as I've gotten older, I almost get embarrassed when people say, "Oh, you've done this or that and that," and I'm like, "Well, I can't take credit for it. because I don't know why I can do this. I mean, if I could have picked something to do, I would have been a pro baseball player. I loved
Yeah.
baseball growing up. I didn't have that skill set, but you could call me tomorrow and say, "Hey, write me 30 jokes on home security," and I could pull out a yellow pad, and in 20 minutes I'd call you back and I'd have you 30 jokes. And I don't know why I can do that. It's like somebody playing music. It's just my gift. So I figure if it is my gift, I need to A, use it in the right way, but B, take this platform that I am so fortunate to have and use it for the right things. And people would say to me, they go, "Well, why aren't you just like a Christian comedian?" I said, "Well, because then the only people I talk to are Christians." I said, "But if I can be a comedian and I can go speak at a church or a wild game dinner or something, and people that aren't Christians will come to listen because they want to hear me be funny. Heck, I can be funny for 30 minutes, but then I can roll it over into the story of Jesus, and
Yeah.
and and so that's just and there's nothing wrong with being a Christian comic. It's just wasn't my path.
Yeah. But even before you got as big as you are, you still chose to do clean comedy.
Yeah.
And where did that come from? Just research, or just that you didn't like? I know you've always liked comedy, but how did you just settle? All right, this is what I'm going to do.
Yeah, it's funny because of what went on in his personal life, but the first comic I was crazy about was Bill Cosby.
Mm.
And I remember being a kid and buying his records and memorizing them and going to school and doing them. But I thought, here's a guy that you don't have to turn this off if your aunt and uncle walk in the room. He and and I was always scared my mother might come to a show, and if she was in the back room, so I just kind of and I kind of realized, well, if you could be funny and be clean, it expands your audience so much. It's like the blue collar comedy tour. I think it's still the top rated thing ever shown on Comedy Central. Well, that's the reason, is if you were watching it and your grandma and granddad came in, you kept it on because there was nothing there that was going to offend them. It was just funny. And so, I thought, well, you got a wider audience, but two, you're honoring this gift too. Because to me, a cuss word shouldn't be a punchline. And you can talk about things without talking about them. And sometimes it's twice as funny as saying something bad. If you do it right, it's harder to do, but you can certainly do it.
Who was your early influences in your Christian walk? I know growing up in Atlanta, then you went out to California for a little while and kind of got away when you were doing your TV. But you've had some guys that have kind of been right there to sort of mentor you. I know a few of them, but boy, I tell you, I know in my own life, I got to have other Christians around me keep sharpening this iron, because occasionally I can find myself looking to serve man instead of serving Christ. And it's a daily battle.
It's funny you say that. My people always talk about their life verse or their favorite verse. My favorite verse is Galatians 1:10, where it says, "Am I now trying to serve man or serve God, or am I trying to please man?" And I just always kind of thought, and it's weird because I don't know anybody else that's their verse, but I always thought, well, if I live my life in a way that pleases God, then does it really matter what other people think about this?
Mm.
And but people like you, people like Brett Butler, people like John Smoltz. Um, I did a small group Bible study for almost 20 years in the back of a barbecue restaurant, and there were so many guys in there that just we did life together. Somebody come in, you'd have a lesson prepared, and they would go, "Man, my wife and I are at each other this week." And we'd go, "All right, put the lesson aside. What's going on? What's going on in your life?" And, my kid, we got a kid on the way. You'd celebrate. My mom died. You'd grieve with them. And I think that's what we weren't intended to live in isolation. We were intended to live in community. And if you think about it, the only thing God ever created that he said it wasn't good, I mean, he created light, oh, that's good. Created animals, that's good. The only thing he said wasn't good was when he created Adam and he said, oh, it's not good that man should be alone.
Mm.
It's not good.
Yeah.
And he created and so for me, I'm like you. I mean, even though it's my heart's desire to live in a way that pleases God, man, I can get selfish in a hurry. I can get judgmental. I pray every morning. One of my things I pray every morning is, do not let me sit on the judgment seat today. That is
Mm.
not my job. That is your job. You just let me love on whoever you put in front of me. And because I can do that, I can sit there and look at somebody and go, you're an idiot and you're doing all this stuff wrong, and
Yep.
that ain't my job, you know. So
So what do you do? Like I read the Bible every day. Try to go every day, read through it. Have accountability partners are called. Like you and I'll hook up every now and then. Just say, hey, I'm going through this. What what advice would you have for somebody out there who's saying, I've heard a lot about this Christian stuff, but I'm not sure it's for me. And I encourage them to say, it's for everybody. That's why we started this show, because whether you're a believer or not, we want you to know that it's real. That Bible's real, and it has answers for about anything everything that you want to tackle in your life.
and you know what's funny? I think God's totally cool with people wrestling with it. Um, because what you're wrestling with is faith, it's things not yet seen. I think he's cool. Go investigate it. Go do a Charles Strobel. Go read Case for Christ, where you've got somebody that's a total non-believer and an atheist that said, "I'm going."
Josh McDowell.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
that says once and for all, I'm going to put this to rest. And he goes and starts investigating it and goes, "Oh my goodness, I didn't realize this was what it was all about."
Yeah.
And I was thinking about this over the last few months. I've asked this question on stage, sometimes doing comedy, sometimes speaking at charity things. But and I don't know whether I want to make a comedy bit out of it or if I want to talk about it in a spiritual format. But I asked the question. I said, how many people here trust your government? Now I've asked this 6 or 7 times. Do you know not one person has raised their hand yet?
Wow.
I said, how many people trust your social media? Nobody raises their hand. How many people trust your news? Nobody has raised their hand. So think about what that says about us. We're okay with being lied to every day from the news, from social media, and from our government. We accept that we're being lied to. And I just go, doesn't that make you absolutely starving for the truth? If
Mm.
nobody is giving you truth, wouldn't you be starving for the truth? And so, for me, Doug, I find if I don't start my morning, if I don't, and I like to get up before anybody else, make me a cup of coffee, and I sit there and I'll read a devotional, and then I'll go, and I don't have a rhyme or reason. Sometimes I'll just go straight through the Bible. Sometimes I'll jump around. But I got to put some truth in me and I got to put some quiet time. And I've got to decide early in that day, okay, be aware that you can be judgmental, be aware that you can be snarky, be aware that you can be moody. And, say, God, I don't want to act like that today. Give me the strength not to do that. If
Mm.
I don't start my day like that, I won't I lose that day because I'm not going to come back at noon and spend that time to do it or at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I have to start my day that way.
I do too. It's got to be there. That's the most important thing for me. One thing I always found really interesting is, and I wanted to ask you because before I got really solid in my testimony, it was almost like I was embarrassed to tell people about it because I said, you know too much about my past for me
Yeah.
to get up here and tell you about what I'm doing now.
Yeah.
So, did you have trouble like transitioning when you'd go? Because you can give it, like you say, a comedy routine in front of anybody, anytime, any audience. Was it that easy when you started getting up and giving your testimony and sharing about your faith?
No, I mean it wasn't because like I live in a in a world where your business, um, I had people in my business say, you're gonna buttonhole yourself, you're gonna put yourself in a box, and you're not
Mm,
gonna be as popular. And I just had to reach the point where I went, I don't care. So either I trust God is going to take care of me, or I don't. It's that easy. Either I trust him or I don't. And I thought, you know what? He's through all my stupidity and uh, all the wickedness that's in me. He's always taken care of me. He's always had,
mm,
and I'm just going to trust him because he says he loves me. He's
mm,
with Jesus sending him to pay for my iniquities. I always say with God, when you say to God, I love you, what you really should say is, I love you too, because he said it
mm,
first. So when somebody says, I love you, you respond with, I love you too. He said it first. So, I mean, I'll be walking in my neighborhood and I'll go, I love you too. Look,
yeah.
look at that. Look at that tree over there. Isn't that cool as rip? I love you too, because you created that because it would be a delight to me.
Mm,
And it's so easy to walk past it a million times and never see it. But if you open your eyes and your ears,
mm,
you're like, wow, you did that for me. You
mm,
know, you mix these colors together for me. You sent your son for me. And that's, when I talk about it now, it, and for people, I don't understand why people at least wouldn't investigate it,
yeah.
because none of us can be good enough to be in the presence of God. He can't be
Mm.
around sin of any kind, whether it's lust and I'm the one guy driving down the street, seeing the girl jogging, going, "Don't look, don't look, don't look, look over here." I mean, it ain't like it comes natural and easy.
I hear
Uh,
you.
but um, I just always land on it. It's like, this is what I tell people. It's like what happened with Jesus coming and living this
Mm,
sinless life and then offered himself up for us. It's one day we're all going to be in front of the judgment seat of God. And I always envision it, because I'm a picture person, of being in a courtroom and everything they're reading against me. What about the time you did this? What about the time
mm.
you did this? Is my intercessor, my defense attorney, Jesus, stands up next to me and holds his hand up and he goes, I already paid for that.
Wow.
And that hand's got a hole in it. I
Mm.
already paid for that.
Amen.
And so they read
Amen.
off the charges, and the judge goes, well, it's already been paid for. The sentence has been served. You're not
Wow.
guilty. And with it, and so that's what I would encourage people to do, is just go read the four gospels. If you've never
Mhm.
investigated it, go read Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. It ain't gonna take you long.
Yeah.
And because, and this is what you find as a comedian. As a comedian, you're always looking for, what do you and I have in common? Even if we didn't grow up in the same place, what do we have in common? What's that common? And the thing that I found with people is, everybody wants to be loved, everybody wants to love, and everybody wants to be worth something. They want
Mm,
to have significance. And what God said with the birth of Jesus is not, you're worth something. He said, you're worth everything to me, because
mm.
this is the most precious thing I have, and I'm going to give that up for you. And what do you have to do to get it? You believe.
Amen.
Do you need money? No. Do you need to behave? Believe. And if you believe in him and you become hungry for his word and what he said, you
Mm,
you just change. You just, and sometimes you don't even realize you've changed. You're
true.
just, I mean, heck, Doug,
Mm,
40 years ago, if I dropped something out of the refrigerator, a bowl of spaghetti sauce, and it spilled all over the floor, I could cuss like a sailor around the house,
yeah.
get so mad it'd ruin the next hour. And then not long ago, opened the refrigerator, a thing of soup fell on the floor, went everywhere. And I went, I didn't even say anything. I just, okay, let me go get a towel and clean it up. I mean, it ain't that big a deal. It's a bowl of soup.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dang, I wouldn't have handled that way before. But you
I
so
know.
in this world that we get lied to all the time, I would think, go find out what the truth is. What is the truth?
Right, if this
Because if we were created, it's like you're sitting in front of a microphone. Somebody created that microphone, and they created it with a purpose. It was to amplify your voice and make it easier for people to hear you. Somebody created that screen behind you so you knew what you were watching. So to not believe means you think everything in the room was created except the most complicated and intricate thing in the room being you, and that you just happen to be a happen chance accident, that
yeah.
you've got a better chance of dumping all the parts of a 747 down a flight of stairs and then coming together and working if we're accidents. And so if we are created, why were we created? We were created with a purpose. And if you read the Bible, it's like, what's that purpose? Love the Creator and love the people around, and love the things He's created.
That's strong. All right, if this is, and then we'll end with this. If this was the Miss America pageant, which it ain't, we'd ask you, so if you had one wish, what would it be? And you'd say world peace. So we're not going to ask that. But it is Christmas. If you had a Christmas wish, what would that be?
It sounds corny. I mean, and people won't believe it because there are times, and like some days I will think, man, if you go read Revelation and what the end times look like, I think, dang, are we in that? Are we getting close? And there are times as your body ages, I've got neck issues and back issues, and sometimes I'm just like, come on, God, let's go home. Let's all go home today. You come back, Jesus, let's go home. And then I think, Jeff, that's a selfish thought, because if he comes back today, there's a ton of people that don't know him. And so if we can push that down the road a little bit, maybe some of those people will come to understand why they were created and how much they're loved. And so that would be my wish. If I had a Christmas wish, I wish everybody would know God and would come to faith in Jesus.
Jeffrey, thank you so much, man. I can say it any better than that. And Merry Christmas to you, buddy.
Merry Christmas. God bless you.
And Merry Christmas to you folks for watching. We love that you're watching our show, and we love hearing from you. So on behalf of all of us here, on behalf of Paul and David and myself, Doug Flynn, thank you for watching the Doug Flynn Show, and a very Merry Christmas.